My name's Kathy Crawford, and I'm with the HACCP Consulting Group. We are a group of about a dozen food safety consultants and trainers. I started out working in the meat and poultry industry for a company for about 10 years, and then I got out and started consulting. And I've worked for a wide variety of foods and discovered that most food companies, when they're small or medium, understanding food safety systems and working with regulatory requirements. And so I'm passionate about what I do, love helping small companies grow by helping them understand some of the rules. Blanca, take a couple of seconds to say hello as well.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm Blanca Ruiz. I'm an associate with the HACCP Consulting Group. I've been in the consulting area for the past year and worked for a large CPG for 22 years in food safety and quality assurance. So I'm happy to be here.
Thanks. Let's go to the next slide. Can you advance the slide? There we go. So we already said welcome in our introductions, but in terms of logistics, I just wanted to encourage everybody to ask questions if you have any. If you don't want to speak up, then maybe you can put them in the chat function, but we're really here to talk a little bit to you, but also hear from you what your questions and needs are. Okay. So we're going to look at USDA compared to FDA. We'll talk about who should register under the FDA and just briefly how to do that. Who needs an FSIS grant of inspection and how that can be handled or started. We'll spend a little bit of time talking about what is a HACCP plan, because that's one of the most frequent questions we get when people come to us and say, we need a HACCP plan or we need HACCP training. And we'll compare that to a food safety plan, which is slightly different. And then we'll talk about a few other programs that you might need for your food safety program and your business success overall. Okay. So we'll just launch in, and Blanca and I are going to take turns a little bit. She's going to talk about FSIS and I'll talk about the FDA. Under FDA, well, back up 1 second, Blanca, if you could. So make sure we understand the difference between USDA and FDA. If your company handles meat, poultry, egg products, or catfish, then you would possibly need to be regulated by the USDA. And the division of USDA that would do that is called FSIS, which stands for the Food Safety Inspection Service. And it depends on how much meat, poultry, eggs, or catfish you might be handling. If your finished product has more than 2% cooked or more than 3% raw, then you fall under USDA. If you're not under USDA regulations, then you would fall under FDA when you're in interstate commerce. If you're not in interstate commerce and your business is still very small, you might only need to be following state and local regulations. So we draw those distinctions just to start from the beginning to say, make sure you understand the rules that apply to you for food safety. But there are other regulations as well, such as OSHA and other factors that impact your business. Okay. So under FDA, and that's most foods, right? Except meat, poultry, egg products, and catfish. Those rules come out of 21 CFR. CFR stands for the Code of Federal Regulations. There are specific areas in there that address things like HACCP, particularly for juice and seafood, and you can see it references those parts of the rule there. And there's also a lot of guidance that is available from the FDA. You see the initials FSMA there. That's usually pronounced like FSMA. It stands for the Food Safety Modernization Act. That's a rule that applies to FDA regulated companies. And most FDA companies also use the food code as a guidance. In general, the FDA doesn't visit very often. And the requirement for FDA facilities is that you have to register your facility on even numbered years. So this being 2024, you would have to do it by the end of the year this year. The program requirements include HACCP or a food safety plan, preventive controls, and usually a food defense plan as well. So you won't see the FDA very often, but when they do come, they usually do a pretty thorough review of your facility. If things are not okay, their enforcement tool is called a Form 483. If it becomes more serious over time, They use a public warning letter. And if it becomes more serious and you are importing food, they use a tool called an import alert. FDA and FSIS are similar, but FSIS is a little bit different, and Blanca will go over that. You are muted. There you go.
Kathy, yes, as Kathy noted, there are differences between USDA and FDA. And for USDA, we do have the Code of Federal Regulations, the 9 CFR, and we also have other directives and guidance. We do have the Federal Meat Inspection Act, the Poultry Products Inspection Act, and the Egg Products Inspection Act. So all those are going to define the requirements based on the proteins that you are producing if you are regulated under USDA. An overview of the enforcement and regulatory factors. They are a little bit of different than FDA because you do need a grant of inspection. You need to apply for that, and you also have to have the mark of inspection in your products and your labels. There is required to have a HACCP plan, which I'm going to be talking more about that. SSOPs, which are standard sanitation operating procedures, and a recall plan. Also, labeling is required by USDA, and they approve all labels. Kathy is going to speak more about that in the next slides. And you also have a daily inspection on site. So there is a USDA inspector on site for you to be able to produce products with the grant of inspection from USDA. Then you may have food safety assessment, periodic FSAs, what we call, and there are different enforcement actions, and similar to FDA, they vary based on severity. For the inspector on site, they will be, if they see a non-compliance to regulations, they are going to write an NR or a record of non-compliance. And if you have a trend of non-compliances, then USDA will show up at the facility and will be conducting an NOI, that it's a notice of intended enforcement. And if things are more serious, USDA may do a withdrawal of the mark of inspection, or they will just suspend your operations if they see a food safety threat. So for registration under the FDA, as Kathy explained, you do have to get registered. And even if you're a small processor, you have to register under FDA. And there is a process that you have to follow. And there are exclusions like retail establishments, restaurants, or primary production farms are not required to register for FDA. For USDA, you apply for a grant of inspection. So if you prepare, pack, or whole food under USDA, then you have to apply for that, and this doesn't apply for retail or food service, so similar to FDA. And now I'm going to speak about HACCP plans. So every company, every food manufacturer has to have a written HACCP plan, which that is required by regulations, and if you are certified under some auditing schemes, you are required to have a HACCP plan. So the HACCP plan is a program, and it is a way to understand risks for your business, food safety, and risks across your operation, from the receiving of your materials, the manufacturing process, to the shipping of your finished goods. So it encompasses all the analysis for food safety risks based on your own manufacturing environment, your products, the products that you're producing, and it helps you assess those risks and also establish controls to prevent any food safety hazards. So the main focus is around ensuring consumer safety. There are, in every HACCP plan, there are 7 steps and are required by regulation as well. And I'm not going to list them all here, but these can be found in any regulatory reference required related to HACCP plan, but you do have to follow those different 7 steps. And as Kathy was saying, we can help you build a food safety plan, HACCP plan, and we can help you train your team in HACCP principles as well, and how to build your food safety, your HACCP plan. Sorry, do you hear some echoing? Okay. All right. So Kathy is going to speak about food safety plans.
Okay, hopefully the sound isn't too much of a problem for you. Most companies start out learning that they need a HACCP plan, and then sometime down the road, if you are an FDA regulated company, you discover that you need a food safety plan. They're almost the same, but a food safety plan in general is a bit bigger than a HACCP plan. It follows a lot of the same philosophy as HACCP, but it encourages a deeper look into certain programs, specifically your sanitation controls, your allergen controls, your supply chain or approved supplier program, and your recall program. Food safety plan is a new term that came out. It's not so new anymore. It started in 2011 now, based on the Food Safety Modernization Act, and it forced industry to expand their HACCP plans to include more things by regulation to ensure that we are creating plans that have a more thorough look at some of the potential hazards. So there's more detail in a food safety plan than a HACCP plan, and it takes a little bit of time and training to understand the difference. They are not two separate things. Your HACCP plan can be part of your food safety plan, but you might hear both words when you're talking to a regulator or a customer or an inspector. So we just wanted to make that a little bit more clear for you, hopefully. Okay. Blanca is going to lead into talking about some of the programs that support your HACCP or your food safety plan. And we all start out with good manufacturing practices and sanitation as the foundation.
Yes, so I hope the sound is better now. And so for FDA, we do have, I do hear some echo on my side, so I apologize for that. So there's little detail in the CFR for GMPs and sanitation. They will refer to a preventive control for allergens and any exposed ready-to-eat products, and they will mention as well sanitation preventive controls, and FDA will have more detail on GMPs. I'm gonna try different, see if the audio is better this way.
Okay.
Okay, can you hear me better? I think there's still some echo.
I saw one person shaking their head.
Okay. Okay, sorry about that. I hope this is better. Okay, then for FSIS, they will ask you to have written signed sanitation standard operating procedures. They ask you to have programs around operational sanitation as well as pre-operational sanitation. So you do have to have those programs written, and USDA is very specific about that piece of sanitation. They also ask for the monitoring and corrective actions for those SSOPs and sanitation performance standards, which I'm going to speak about that in the next slide. They will require to follow that per regulation and per 9 CFR, and then FDA will be required to follow current good manufacturing practices or GMPs. At the end, they are both very similar, as they require, they have requirements around facilities as well as the operation itself, how you are operating producing safe food. So for the GMPs, you have requirements around grounds and pest control, construction, lighting, ventilation, plumbing, and sewage. You have to demonstrate that you are compliant with those regulations when you have an inspector on site or when you start operating under either FDA or USDA. And for the requirements for dressing rooms, lavatories, equipment, utensils, sanitary operations, employee hygiene, and there may be some requirements around some facilities that are custom exempt. Kathy, do you want to?
So that was a really quick walk through some of the requirements of those supporting programs like sanitation and good manufacturing practices. And they are slightly different between USDA and FDA, so it's important to know where to look up those rules. Start with 21 CFR. For FDA, it's going to be under 21 CFR Part 117. For USDA regulated facilities, it's under 9 CFR Part 416 is where you look for the information on those requirements. If you're having trouble remembering that, contact us, email the question, and I'll email you back to help you find those rules. Other differences between USDA and FDA that Blanca referred to earlier is how they approach labeling. For FDA, when you make a product and you want to put it on the market, you just do it. They don't approve your label. They might look at it later, but they won't look at it before you put it on the market. There are expectations that the label has to be true and accurate according to some labeling standards, but it's very different under USDA or FSIS. You cannot sell the product until the label is approved ahead of time, and that's done by an agency that works with FSIS. Under USDA or FSIS, you can approve some labels yourself once you have gotten an initial label approved. For example, minor changes like changing the serving size would not have to be approved by FSIS. And there's a long list of what you can approve yourself versus what the agency has to approve. But on every label under USDA or FSIS, you have to show the inspection legend that tells the consumer where exactly the product was made. Okay. The other topic that we wanted to just touch on, there's so much that we could talk about today, but we just wanted to kind of say hello and introduce you to some of the rules that you might be facing. The other topic is having a recall plan. Under the FDA, a written plan is mandatory if your food might have any potential hazards. And that's determined when you write a HACCP plan or you develop a food safety plan. So the FDA requires 4 basic things in your recall plan. It has to describe how you would notify your customers of what's going on, how you would notify the public, which is usually through a press release, how you would conduct effectiveness checks to prove that your recall is happening the way it should, and what you would do with the food after it has been returned or perhaps destroyed, or how you would ensure that to make sure the public is going to be safe. Under USDA, the plan is mandatory for all establishments. So there's a slight difference there. Under FDA, you only need a recall plan if there is a hazard associated with your food. Under USDA, all establishments have to have a recall plan, and the content is pretty similar. Okay. Record keeping is a little bit different between FSIS and FDA. Under FSIS, if you are conducting slaughter activity or you have a refrigerated product, you have to maintain records at least 1 year. For frozen, preserved, or shelf-stable products, you have to keep your records for 2 years for the most part. You can keep records off-site after 6 months. But if you store them somewhere else, you have to retrieve them within 24 hours of USDA requesting to see any particular record that pertains to product safety. Under FDA, the rule is a little bit more straightforward and simple. They just say all records have to be retained for a minimum of 2 years. Okay. So that was a really fast run through some of the program requirements. And we'd like to know if you have any questions about any of the rules that you've been facing or the things that you have to do or you've heard about that might be rules. It can get complicated, and it's our job to simplify things. We do this for companies all across the United States. We usually start by doing some training so they understand the rules themselves. But when they get stuck, they call us and we help them from time to time when they have an inspection or a third-party audit where they maybe need a little bit of help with their food safety program. Despite all the complications, we all have the same goal: just make safe food, right? Make a great product, get it out there, make some money, and make some consumers happy. That's our goal. How we talk about it and how we demonstrate success is different. And very often, the most common problem that Blanca and I see, I think, if I can speak for both of us, is that when we visit companies, we find companies that can do great things, but don't know how to prove it. And that's where it comes to play that these written programs are really essential to your success. So we've partnered with Gen Edge today to develop and prepare this short webinar just to find out what your needs might be and to help introduce you to some of the rules that you might be facing in the future. I see somebody's got a hand up if we can answer the question.
Hello, my name's Chris. That was very informative. Thank you. I was curious, why does catfish get its own kind of special, very niche call out in terms of where it lives in the regulatory spectrum?
Yeah.
And I'll just share a context there because my teammate Sean and I have been exploring blue catfish here around the Chesapeake Bay. And I thought that uniquely was carved out to be regulated by the FDA, but that as like a subspecies, which is curious on its own terms. But why does catfish get its own treatment is really my question.
Okay, I can address that. First, I don't know all types of catfish, but if the blue catfish you're looking at falls under the siluriform species, it does fall under USDA. The history is partially about food safety and partially about regulatory concerns. When a food is regulated by USDA, not FDA, and it's something maybe produced overseas and they want to import it here to the United States, under FSIS has to approve that country's food safety system or they can't import here. So it's a very careful process that allows meat, poultry, catfish into the country. So you can probably guess that slows down imports a little bit. The catfish industry actually asked to come under USDA. Some of it may have been political concerns, some of it may have been financial concerns, but some of it may have been food safety concerns as well when there was some examination of how catfish was raised overseas. So it's a little complicated.
Interesting. Thank you very much. Can we, there's at least 4 Virginia economic developers on this call. They're curious in working in the food space. Can we help route companies to you guys for services and advice as they're thinking about, where do I stand and do I have the right plans in place? Am I, compliant? And maybe looking to kind of level up their food safety prevention plans? Is that kind of the idea, is we can help kind of route them to you guys for that type of advisory?
Yeah, that's why we wanted to reach out to get in touch with folks, because we know these MEP programs reach out to smaller companies, and that's what we do for a living. If someone just has a brief question, we don't charge for that. I'm happy to answer emails. Blanca does the same thing. But if someone needs us to sit down and focus on their program or maybe conduct some training, then we would talk about a consulting relationship.
Well, I'd like to take a moment to thank you all again for joining us and give you just a quick brief overview of what the Gen Edge role is in here. We are focusing on several growing sectors in Virginia, one of them being food and beverage manufacturing. And so we wanted to offer this opportunity to give an overview of a particular topic, but we're also asking you whether you're a manufacturer yourself, or I know we have a lot of economic development friends joining us as you're talking to your accounts and clients in this space, what needs that they are seeing and having, and that perhaps it's something that we can do here at Gen Edge to address that, whether it be in some short webinars like this, or we can work on longer term with them, providing assistance through someone like Kathy's group or some other things internally at Gen Edge. So we invite you to ask us questions. I'm going to share just a contact screen for me at Gen Edge, and anybody in any of the manufacturing sector in Virginia can certainly reach out to us, but we're happy to discuss all of the things that we have available. Companies can join the Gen Edge Alliance, since it's smaller for the smaller manufacturers, whether they be in food and beverage or any other manufacturing effort. and it's a free opportunity for them to get a lot of information, a little bit of consulting, a lot of digital training and information, and then the emerging business program, which is sort of an extra step from the alliance, as well as the supply chain efforts that my colleague is overseeing. So just wanted to throw that out there, ask if there were any additional questions, whether it be to Kathy and Blanca or to myself or any of us at Gen Ed. I'm happy to follow up with you after if you'd like, or we can set a time to talk one-on-one. Well, thank you again. I hope you will reach out to us with your questions and share information with your teams, your clients and accounts that are out here doing this. And anything that we can do. I get distracted by chats and questions. Sorry about that. Anything that we can do to be of assistance. We're always looking at Gen Edge to develop additional offerings in this space, especially for small and medium-sized businesses in the manufacturing space. Would love to talk with you more about that if you'd like.